Hello and welcome to another episode of the BookBaby Spotlight Podcast, your home for interviews with authors, illustrators, editors, and other industry insiders from the world of self-publishing. My name is Sam Saddam and my co-host is Chad Henson.
What's up, everybody?
And today we're pleased to bring you a conversation with comedian and TV writer Lois Bromfield. Her book, My Dirty Life in Comedy, is coming out this summer, and the ebook is being distributed by BookBaby.
What will we know Lois from?
Glad you asked. She was a longtime writer for the original Roseanne show, not involved in the reboot, unfortunately. And she also did stand-up. I guess she still does stand-up, but not in a year or so, thanks to COVID. And now she does so in Germany, where she lives with her partner.
That's a great cover photo.
Yeah, we're going to have to use that for the podcast episode. So I watched some of her old stand-up bits, and they're pretty funny. And really interesting to me was reading the book and trying to match up the time frame for where this comedian is in her life.
Yeah, that's always interesting for musicians as well. Documentaries, old albums, even memoirs that mark a period in time in the artist's career.
Yeah, you have a favorite musician memoir to recommend?
Yeah, a book called It's All in Your Head by independent rapper, singer, and producer Russ. He's well known for his organic rise to fame without a record deal. And in his memoir, he talks about his journey breaking into the music industry and the mindset he had to maintain in order to persevere.
We also have plenty of BookBaby memoirs out there. It's a very popular thing to self-publish. Trans rights activist Hope Giselle, Navy SEAL David Goggins, the Shabazz the OG, just to name a few. There's really too many to count. So without further ado, here's my conversation with comedian, writer, and now published author Lois Bromfield. Her wonderful memoir, My Dirty Life in Comedy, is now available on the BookBaby bookshop. The book starts with her decision to move to New York City from her home in Canada to chase her dreams.
It was a huge culture shock, but you know what? I loved Americans right away. I mean, when I was in Canada when I was a kid, and I met my first American in a shoe store, and Canadians are relatively quiet people, you know. So I remember being with my mother. I was a little kid and hearing, "Hey, what's you guys got a size 9?" Like just big, loud, wonderful American voices, and I really liked them. And I thought I want to go and live where those people are because that's who I was. So. I went to New York in 1978, I guess it was 1977. And it was so dirty and so horrible. And I loved it because I just wanted to be part of it. It was scary. I was really naive when I was young. And I just wasn't paying attention to anything. So it's amazing I'm alive, honestly. But it was great. It was really amazing in the 70s.
And there was just no other option back then for comedians. You had to go to New York?
You had to go to New York because in Toronto and Canada, there was no comedy clubs. So, you know, there was no place to perform. So you couldn't do stand-up anywhere. And there was no radio shows that did comedy. I mean, there was comedy, but there was no stand-up comedy. And Mark Breslin, who owns Yuck Yucks, he wasn't around doing comedy yet. He wasn't opening comedy clubs. But there was no other choice. I could have gone to LA, but I never thought of that. It was too far away. And I was only, 20 something. So yeah, I really wanted to go to New York, and I loved it right away. It was so difficult, though. Everything was expensive and dirty and difficult.
Still expensive, a little bit less dirty, from what I hear.
Yeah, I mean, now it's really great. Now it's easy. Now it's like there's a Starbucks and the Gap, and everything's really safe. And you can sit in Times Square on those stairs they have, and you can sit there at 2:00 in the morning and drink a coffee, and nothing will happen to you. I mean, it's just different. But New York in the 70s was really unbelievable. Yeah, it was nuts.
So what comedians did you admire growing up? How'd you get it?
I don't know. I loved Elaine Boozler. I really liked. She was a New York comedian. And Larry David was doing comedy in the 70s. Isn't that great? Larry David was doing stand-up. And he would get up on stage and just I don't know what he was talking about, but he just wasn't talking about anything. Like it was just rantings, and it was good. And this was his big genius brain, you know. And I didn't see Jerry Seinfeld, though. I don't know why I never saw him performing then. I guess he was in LA already. And Gabe Kaplan, I remember seeing him for all the comedians really old and just starting out in New York. And there was many others. I don't remember them right now, but there was tons of them. And I was so new. So, I went on at 2:00 in the morning, and it was really, really hard. And I look back on it now, I think how hard it really was to do. And now when I go to London and perform, the comedians and the women comedians are so good. They're all so good. And there's tons of them. And back then there was me and 4 other women. That was it. And there was nobody else in the club. It was all men, which was fine, but it was tough, But yeah. And the comedians back then were the people who really made it big. I really liked them. They were really good, really smart, funny.
So on the topic of women comedians, you reference that you always had back then an intro of, "Are you ready for a lady comedian?" And it was kind of a patronizing thing. So I'd imagine that's changed a bit, huh?
Yeah, it's changed. Well, because once you have a reputation and people know who you are, they're really respectful of you. But some MCs do it. It's rare, but back then, yeah, it was a big novelty. So they brought you on like a novelty act. But the women complained over the decades, and then they said, don't bring me on like that. And once you started to get credentials, and once they started to bring women on like Sandra Bernhardt, who had some notoriety, then they had to be more respectful of their intros, and it changed the whole tone of it. So that you just bring all women on like this a comic, just a comedian, not, oh, here we go, a woman. They didn't do that anymore. It was pretty patronizing, yeah. But it changed, and now when I go on, of course, they bring you on like you're their mom. So it's great. They're really careful, they say. And the music's really careful. Everybody's really careful. But yeah, I mean, it was, I don't want to say it was hard for women, but it just wasn't a lot of us. And there wasn't a lot of women. But I got to tell you, I keep saying it because it blows your mind when you see how many female comics there are now. They're so good. I mean, they're way better than I was when I started. They're so bold and brash, and they don't care what they say. And they're totally liberated and open and funny, just so funny, so good.
Well, the idea of being better than you were, you reference early on in your book that the idea of bombing was a rite of passage, and you knew it had to happen. So what's that feeling like? I always wondered what that was like.
It was awful. I mean, you bombed because you didn't know how to handle your audience. I mean, when I would bomb, I bombed on television once. I'll never forget that. It never left me. On television, to bomb on TV was horrible. But in the clubs, when you're starting out the first couple of years, yeah, you bomb all the time because you don't know what you're doing. You don't have a grip on it. You don't have control of your crowd. So you would bomb. And then sometimes I would go up in front of, 20 people who were drunk, and you just bomb. They yell at you. They tell you to get off stage. They say, I mean, it's just unbelievable, the things people say to you. You're a comic. So you either get good or you quit. And you just got to get good at it. And so I got good. I got better, and bombing makes you better. But I've seen comics, I got to be honest, I've seen comics who bombed and they got famous. They made it somehow, whether it was because of their act, it was because of their looks, or because of their persona or something. They weren't necessarily funny, really funny. And like the first time I saw Eddie Murphy, I mean, he was so confident and so good, and Sam Kinison was just like a screaming maniac. But these people were there was nobody like them, they were just there was just no one like them. So that's what you had to establish, was you had to become really just a person they knew who you were right away, and there was no one who could copy you. And then you were good, and the audience would mess with you because you were so strong. This book was so much fun to write. I had never written a book in my life. I had written television, but when I sat down and I said to my partner, I'm going to write a book about my years in Hollywood. And she said, that's great. But I'm sitting there for like a year and a half or whatever it was, a long time. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to find the interesting stories, because they're only interesting to me, So I don't know if people are going to want to read it. And then all the dirty stuff and the words and some of the stuff I did, I just figured, just write it. Who cares? People are going to go, what? But they're not going to go, oh my gosh, I got to close this book and go to church. They're going to read it. And an 88-year-old woman who's a friend of mine, her mother read this book. I was so horrified. She told me, she said, my mother read the book. Your mother, who's 88? She loved it. I said, what about all the language? She goes, didn't bother her at all. She loved it. Wow. What a compliment. Oh.
So what inspired you to write a memoir?
I'm 66 years old. So I thought, I should probably write a memoir. I should probably write something so I have it, so it's out there in the world. And I knew everything I was writing. So I wanted to write. I wanted to share my years in New York. I wanted to share when my mother died. I wanted to share everything. And the writing for Roseanne was such a big deal. And I was sharing that it was great. Amy Sherman and all the people I got to know, they're really great writers. And that experience of making money and sitting in that room day and night for like 4 years in Roseanne, and then other shows I wrote on. But Roseanne I really learned to write there, and because it was like prison. It was like getting paid to sit in prison. It was, because you just sat there and you ate and you chain smoked, and and you yelled at each other, and some people had affairs, and it was unbelievable. It was incredible. We came up with a show every week.
It's just not the simile I was expecting to then go. It was like prison.
It was totally like prison. You're just in a prison, but you're getting a huge paycheck. It's like they slipped the paycheck into the cell, and you go, I'm making all this money. I'm fat. I'm drinking wine at night it was a nightmare that way. But after you finished that job, after 4 years, you could work anywhere because people respected that you worked on that show and you survived it. So, but it was an amazing job, and it was an amazing show, and the writers were good. And Roseanne was sometimes unbearable, but at the end of the day, she was always there for me. She was great.
That was what I was going to ask. When you say surviving it, was it due to personal conflicts there that would even be necessary to us?
Yeah, because you were stuck together so much. Mm-hmm. You were in the room so much. So some people would fight with each other, or you'd come up with a story and somebody would say, I pitched that last week, so that's my story, because you get paid for that. So then you would fight about who owned what ideas. And mostly it was good on Roseanne because we had a couple of head writers who were really strong, and they would say, okay, here's the story we're going to do. And, back then it was like we had little computers in our office, but we didn't have, phones, which is good. Because honestly, if we'd had phones back then to look at, we wouldn't have paid attention. We would have been even worse. So, and we had a chalkboard where they had to write the ideas on the chalkboard. I mean, it was just like, it was really, really fun. But after 4 years, I was like, I don't know, I was like 100,000 pounds heavier, and everybody was fat. And it was just, that's how you came out of it, fat, and you had some money to go to Hawaii, Good.
Not a bad deal.
No, it wasn't a bad deal. You just had to lose weight. It took like a whole year to look like a human being again. That was about it.
So how is writing a book different from writing a TV show?
Oh, totally different. First of all, you're by yourself and you're just writing. So you have to tell yourself, I want to do this and not quit. Because after a few months, you think, I've lost my path, or I don't really want to do it. Plus, you're writing prose the whole time. You're not writing characters and dialogue. And so in a television show, it's already set. So you say, these are the characters and this is the story. And in television, the main character the story has to revolve around them. So in the book, it wasn't, because it's a biography about me, I guess it kind of revolved around me, but it was me telling my story as if I was sitting telling somebody my story. This is what happened. And in television, it's different. You got to have dialogue for all your characters. You got to build a story around dialogue and act breaks and build a suspense, and you got to solve it all in 22 minutes. So that's quite different. And this was sort of just writing endlessly, and then having to really make sure it's interesting and you're not drifting off into an area that nobody cares about. And that's what I had to learn. And that was hard. And there's probably some moments in the book that aren't interesting, but I tried not to do that. And this is my first book. So, I mean, so far it's done really well. In London, it's doing better than anywhere else for some reason. I can't explain that. In England.
Interesting.
And it's really interesting. So, and the US is doing okay, but nobody knows who I am, so this is another reason why. I was like, I don't know if you know this, but you should know this. On Amazon.com, where the book is for sale, they have a picture of the Queen of England and her photos, her 50 years of photographs. My book is right next to hers. So it's Queen Elizabeth's 50 years of photographs. And then next to it is My Dirty Life comedy. Isn't that great?
That's the algorithm at play with Amazon. You never know what's going to happen.
Isn't that brilliant? I mean, it's just ridiculously brilliant. So I love that. I was like, wow.
So did you prefer the independent versus collaborative in the writing process? Was it less prison-like?
It was a lot less prison-like. Yeah, because you have total control over your time. So you just come in and you write when you want to, and then you go out and do something else for 4 days and come back to it. But the money in television was great. The money was really good. So this is a totally different part of my life now, where I get to do this, and I didn't really care about the money. I really cared about if I could actually write a book. That was my big concern, if I could do it. And so far the reaction's been pretty good. My friends love it. All the comedians have read it and like it, but it's a challenge for me to write a book. And my brother is also a writer, and he writes much better than I do. He writes science fiction and he writes novels, which I would never attempt to write a novel. So just short stories and little tiny stories. But yeah, I mean, I think I couldn't imagine writing on television now. I couldn't do it. You can't go into a room and sit there at my age and sit there till 4 o'clock in the morning and have to eat a whole pie to stay awake. Couldn't do that. No, I don't want to do that. So
So did you attempt to go through a traditional publisher? And why'd you end up choosing self-publishing?
Do you know what's really funny? Because everyone said that to me. Everyone said you should really try to get a publisher. Don't do self-publishing. But you guys, BookBaby, there's something so good about the way you present yourself online. And it's so professional. And I think what attracted me to it was, and somebody had told me, I don't remember who told me, go to BookBaby. I said, what is BookBaby? So I look it up. And the thing that's really, really pulled me towards you to publish my book was you have everything covered. First of all, your presentation of your website is huge. We do this. We will edit. We'll present it. We'll bind it. You do everything. It's a real business. It's absolutely 100%. It explains everything. There's just nothing you have to think about with BookBaby. So for me, I looked it up and I saw everybody. You have pictures of people like this. You have really goofy, fun pictures of people with their books, which I loved. And then I looked at the prices and I thought, this is expensive. But then I thought, this isn't expensive. This is really great. And yeah, it just felt like the right place to go. And nobody else really had anything like that online. I didn't see anything else like that to compare to your company. So, yeah, I guess I thought about getting a publisher, and maybe this next book I thought about getting a publisher, but I think I would do my book again with you, this next one. And then maybe when I write fiction, maybe then I would try to get a publisher, but I think I need to establish myself and get a little notoriety before I do that. You guys made it easy, honestly.
You do have some notoriety. You have an existing fan base. Have you thought about how you're going to leverage that fan base to promote your book?
I've been trying. I've been doing it through Instagram and Twitter and my Facebook page. I'm not sure I'm doing that good a job. I may not be doing enough, but I think the next book, I'm going to make sure that I have more help with that, because I think I need more help to get my name out there, to get people to buy the book. And I know if I had a publisher, I'd probably have a lot more sales, but I just don't want to go through having to get a publisher and having them say, oh, we're not interested. I don't care. I just don't. It's like you kind of earn the right to just do it yourself, package it yourself, do it yourself. But if I was looking to make a lot of money, I guess I would try to get some better advertising. And I don't know how I'm going to handle it. It's like I'm not looking at it that way, that seriously, really, that in a big way. I just want to write a book and have people read it and laugh and like it. So I know it sounds really artsy fartsy, but that's how I feel.
We have people, authors from all over the place who have lots of different goals for their books. Have you thought about, do you have a specific goal in mind for this book, for My Dirty Life in Comedy?
I want people to really love it and laugh and read it and come see my stand-up. I wanted to try to somehow connect it to my stand-up, because when I go to London and I do stand-up comedy, the people that, it has to be the reason, people that are buying my book have to have seen my stand-up. It has to be connected somehow, because it's just odd that in every other place that I've put out advertising, London is doing the most for some reason. I don't know if they're buying hundreds of books, but they're buying them. And I don't know what the end result of the money is. I don't know yet. It'll probably be like $80. I don't know. I don't care. I just want people to read it and see my stand-up. And yeah, I don't know. I just want to get laughs. Like I love doing comedy. So to get up on stage and have somebody come up to me afterwards and say, we loved your book, that's enough. It's great.
We got to get you some printed copies of your book to then sell at the shows.
You know what? That's great that you said that, because somebody told me that actually. You should get some printed copies. Yeah, I should. I will.
I'll get you over to the sales department after this call.
Okay, I'm going to go in September, so I will get some books. I will. That's a great idea. Yeah.
September when you're getting back on tour? Or?
September the 7th through the 14th of 1 week, I'm going to go to London in September, and I'm going to read a little bit out of the book, and then that's a good idea, and get some books and sell them. Great idea. And then the next book, my next book is called A Comedian Lost in Bavaria. It's going to be good. Okay.
So that goes into the
German
stages of your life when you moved to Germany.
Yeah. It's all about trying to survive here and how funny it's been, how horribly hard it's been, the language, and just being an American person and being a gay person living in a little tiny, we live in a tiny town, 12,000 people. So there's just nothing here for me. My partner is fabulous. We've been together 14 years, but I'm in this little town. I don't fit in at all. So it's all about that. But I have friends here, but it's a story about living here, because everybody who read the book, my other book, said, I want to know more. I want to know what happened next, because you stopped so abruptly. The book ended so fast. So I want to know what happened after that. So
what is it like trying to do a comedy show in Germany? Do you have to have specific times for English comedians?
Yeah, they do. In fact, in Berlin, they have an English show once every couple of months, and they put English comedians on. And in Munich, they do it. There's a couple of other ones. Dusseldorf, they do English shows, and then they do online shows. I did a couple of those, but so many people, like in Berlin or in Munich, lots of people speak English. I mean, almost everybody does. So you can really do stand-up. You can really do it all the time, but they only do it a couple of times a month, once every 2 months. And the German comedians are good. I mean, some of the German comedians are good and some of them are not good. I mean, American comedians are really good and British are amazing. And when you watch the German comedy shows, oh my God, it's so funny. They're so broad, you know, they're not like bitter, like, hi, I hate it here. They don't do that stuff. I wish I were dead. They don't do all that bitter stuff. They're just like, hi, hey. They're really broad and really big. And I think some of them are really good. There's a woman here. I can't think of her name. Damn, I can't think of her name. She's chubby and she's really smart. And she does all political humor. And I watched her once and my partner had to translate everything for me. She wanted to kill me because she was translating constantly, but she was really, really, really good. And she's more like an American comic, you know, more like a little low key and with an attitude. But yeah, and German television is just so different than American TV.
I wanted to get into, because it's Pride Month now, you wrote about coming out in the 90s. And, obviously it's a few years removed from Stonewall, but, it's still an entirely different time. So, what was that experience like? What made you come out at that time?
I was really shy about coming out because everybody else was. I mean, there's a comedian named Jason Stewart, who's an American comedian, and he was the bravest person. He just came out. He just came out like crashing out. He did his stand-up. He just talked about being gay, and I'm sure he went through hell with audiences and with the backlash from that, but he's a really successful actor and comedian now. But it was really hard because I was young and pretty, and I would get on stage, and for me to say I was a lesbian would have killed my act. It would have killed any television appearances. It would have killed everything. And when I did finally come out, it didn't really matter because I was writing television. So I kind of did it. I didn't do it when I really wanted a stand-up career. I did it after I thought that was over, and it didn't matter. And then I just said, I'm gay, and who cares? And people didn't respond well to it, even then. I mean, I started working on Roseanne in 1990. 92, 91, I don't remember the year. Yeah, 91, 92 season. And then I remember going to the Comedy Store and saying I was gay, and people just were like horrified. And they were just like quiet, and you just kind of go, guys, it's 1991. What are you, nuts? And now I go to London, I say I'm a big dyke. They love it. I mean, they love it. Everybody loves it. Nobody cares. It's completely different. But back then it was really, really, it was scary and hard to come out. I came out on the Arsenio Hall show, which was a huge mistake. The audience just completely, like, they just went quiet as if I'd cut my wrist in front of them, And yeah, the coming out stuff and being a gay comedian and being a gay anybody in Hollywood then was really hard. And the people that came out and said they were gay were just my heroes. I don't know how they did it and survived their careers, but I was really scared to do it. I did it in little tiny pieces. I wasn't brave enough to just come out. I did an article in The Advocate. I came out then, but this was when I was writing already. So yeah, it was terrible and still is. Some comics still have a hard time with it, Can't say it. That's bullshit, really. It is.
Yeah, it seems like it must have been a really hard line to walk because your friends are all comedians who all know, or at least seem to know this about you, and are then you're forced to take on this different persona to the public.
Yeah, it was really awful. And I remember coming out and saying, and I couldn't, the men would come up at you and the guys would ask you out, or and you tell them you were gay and they'd call you a bitch. They get mean. They would get mean. And then you just kind of go, fuck, I don't know how to be myself. And it would change your act. So you'd go on stage and you would talk about things that didn't matter at all. So you talk about shopping and dating. And me talking about dating a man was so stupid because it never rang true. It always sounded fake. And I would watch myself on TV and go, oh God, why do I have to say I'm straight? Why can't I just talk about something else, which is what I eventually did. But I could never say I had a partner or a girlfriend, never. I couldn't do it. I wasn't brave enough until later. And then I was kind of a little bit less shy about it. But I did a video in 1985. This is interesting. I did a video called Sorority Girls from Hell. This really culty, crazy video. And it caught on in the gay community, and it got pretty well known. And then I would go and do gay clubs. I would do a straight club, say I'm straight. Then 2 weeks later, I'd go to Atlanta and I would do a gay club and say I'm a die. I would say everything. It was great. So I was living these two lives, and this video was really popular. So yeah, it was wild, and it still is. Guys still write to me, "We love your video." Really? It's so long ago, such a long time ago. But I have a lot of really big fans from that video. It's gotten about maybe 2 million hits on YouTube over the years. It's pretty good.
Must have been easier to have two different personas at different nightclubs now back then than today, where those videos just would have been up on YouTube immediately back to back.
Yeah, you could never hide. Yeah, you couldn't. There's no place to hide that. No, now you're just, now you would be out. It would be over. But back then you could do it. You could hide. And my agent would say to me, "You can't come out because you won't be able to get any more work." Okay. And I think that was part of the reason why I ended up writing, because I thought, first of all, I wanted to make more money. And then I didn't really want to go on the road. I hated the road.
Before I let you go, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the current world of comedy. Obviously, shows have been shut down for a little while now. What do you think comedy looks like post-COVID?
I think it's going to be really, well, first of all, I hope that not everyone's talking about COVID because you have to kind of not talk about it. You can do maybe one joke. I'm not going to have any jokes about it. But I think the best thing is there's always going to be somebody who's going to do it. So why should I do it? I mean, I have nothing in my show that's about COVID. I have nothing about staying at home all the time, nothing. Maybe one little line within another joke about staying home all the time. It was no different than, my normal life. So I don't know, but I'm not going to actually write jokes about it because I don't think who cares? People know it. They already know what we had to live with. Who wants to hear a joke about it? And some other comic will do it. No, I have my own stuff I talk about, and that won't be part of it, I don't think. Maybe now I say that now.
Really quickly. How many, what sort of jokes can you even make? It kind of reminds me with the jokes everybody feels like they need to start off any sort of comedy show with now is all about cancel culture and saying, I'm not going to stop at any lines. Like, you're not really adding anything to the joke here. You're not saying anything original.
Yeah, it's just not a really great way to start your job. Don't do your jokes just don't state the obvious. That's all. And I'm sure there's good jokes out there about it, but I don't know what they are. And I'm not doing them. So
for me, it's just there's always been a line between what's transgressive and what's allowed, and comedy's always walked that line. That
you have to walk that line. You have to walk over it. You have to stomp all over it. And it's great that's what stand-up comedy is all about. It's gotten better. I mean, in the 70s and the 80s, doing stand-up, people, I'm not sure how they were crossing the line. I don't really remember, honestly, any comics that were really crossing the line.
Well, George Carlin was just getting up and saying bad words.
And yeah, he was saying all kinds. He was great. I got a chance to work with him.
Yeah.
In a TV show. My God, I did a little TV show with him. Oh, he was so great. I remember saying to him backstage, I was so nervous because he was just like a god to me, a comedy god. And I remember saying to him, I can't say I'm a lesbian in my act. He said, "Oh, I'm just going to say." He said, "Well, fuck them. Just say it. Doesn't matter. Who cares what they think?" And for some reason, that never left me. It was like, for him to say that to me, that was his advice. I took it with me and then eventually came out. But he was so, he was so great. But he got in trouble. He got in trouble for being so irreverent and so crossing the line. He was such a nice guy. God, he was smart. There wasn't anybody like him. There's nobody else like him since then, I don't think. But yeah, wow. I love talking about all the old comics. It's really fun because they were really great. And now there's some really great ones too. But not as great because they didn't have to break so many rules now. Now all the rules are broken, so it's easier, But these were the rule breakers and pretty cool.
What other comedians were you awestruck by meeting in person?
I loved Sam Kinison. I loved Sandra Bernhard. Sandra Bernhard I loved because she just got up and she would do Jackie Kennedy. Like, she'd get up on stage in the Main Room Comedy Store and she would just do like 10 minutes of Jackie Kennedy. People didn't know what she was doing. But she got famous because she stuck to what she believed was funny and good and smart and interesting to watch. It was really, really good. And some of the comics that got big laughs didn't get anywhere, So it just depended on what you were presenting, your persona, and how honest you were, and how you stuck with it. You didn't abandon what you were talking about or back down. She was so good. And
read your book and wrote an intro. I see.
What?
And read your book and wrote an intro for it?
She did. She wrote. I asked her. I hadn't talked to her in a long time. I said, Sandra, will you write a forward for me? And she said, oh, sure, honey. Like, I haven't talked to her in years. She just said, okay. And we talked about the 70s and we talked about everything. And then she and her partner wrote it together. And they said they had to sit for hours and figure out the right thing to say. But yeah, she and I were really good friends then. And but like Diane Nichols was a really good comic. And some of the guys, there's a guy named Alan Stevens who was a really good comedian. God, he was so good. And Sam Kinison, they were they were like a gang of boys that went on the road. They were tough. And they all wore big long jackets and some of them had guns and it was just craziness. Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, it was the wild times. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the comics now are just, I mean, like Amy Schumer is really good. Do you know Amy Schumer's stand-up? Stand-up's pretty good. Yeah. And these women are just like, they just say whatever they say. It's very good.
I feel like some of the comedians today are getting more options to play with the medium and add more elements. Hassan Minhaj did a really good set. I think it's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
He had just like an interactive thing going on behind him. There were always like pictures popping up and like adding to his joke. And you're like, that's incredible. Like, it's really cool to see the way the medium is being played with. Yeah,
you can really do that. I mean, the thing is, I'm an old school comic, so I just get up and do my act. But yeah, comedy has really moved into a completely different area. It's really good. And yeah, I mean, I just think there's comics out there who have written books about their careers. I can't think of his name now. It's driving me crazy. I can't think of the other comic that I love so much. And he wrote a book about his stand-up and about his career. And a lot of the books are great. Some of them are not great because, who cares? Like there's some comics that just talk about why they didn't make it. I didn't make it. I never made it. I didn't do the Tonight Show. I didn't get famous. Yeah, you just can't write that. Nobody wants to read how bad you feel about your career. You have to write about how much fun you had and what you contributed to the comedy culture, really. To come up in the comedy boom was a big honor. To look back and go, I was part of that comedy boom is huge. And the young comics who are reading my book, I had one woman write to me, and she's like 23, and she's starting to do stand-up. She goes, oh my God, your book was so great. I loved it so much. I'm not doing half of that. I'm not doing anything compared to that. But she's good and smart and funny and she loved it. So this is great. This is what I should have said to you before. That's what I'm giving back. I'm giving back. This is what I did. So you guys can do way more, but this was the road I paved. So now you get to speed down there and do something else. But yeah.
Cut that piece in later. That's the good part of podcasts.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that's what I meant to say. That's what I was stumped me a little bit. I'm like, why did I write this book? That's really the reason, to give it to other people, to hand it over. Here, check this out. This is what I did.
All right. Thank you so much to Lois Bromfield for her time, and congratulations on her new release, My Dirty Life in Comedy, available on the BookBaby bookshop now. As always, please follow, like, rate, subscribe, and share the BookBaby Spotlight podcast. And if you're interested in publishing your memoir or any other title with BookBaby, our self-publishing specialists are standing by at 877-961-6878 or info@bookbaby.com. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.